Welcome to the Investor Coaching Show. Here's your host, Paul Winkler.
Okay. Back here on the Investor Coaching Show. Paul Winkler. PaulWinkler.com is the website where we have all sorts of material on there that you can kind of peruse through at your leisure. So Jim in the office up in Goodlettsville gave me this article, and I thought it would fit really well in the topic that I'm talking about. Fiduciary. All these investment firms marketing themselves as we're going to keep your best interest first, but what that does is it tends to cause people to turn a blind eye, and they can do all kinds of things that you look at and go, is that really in somebody's best interest? And I would look at it and go, no, not in my humble opinion, but if the advisor doesn't know what's necessarily in the client's best interest, and as was seen by that one study I refer to quite often, the USC Indiana University study, don't even know what's in their own best interest. And when I was a broker, I was investing in all kinds of things for myself that now I look back and go, what on earth were you doing? It was just, these were things I was told by my management. This is what you do. This is how you do it. And then I had people that were higher ups in the company and people that were working with me that had a few years under their belt. I didn't know what they didn't know. And that's the key. You don't know what they don't know. And that's the problem you run into, is if you don't know what they don't know, you can end up falling prey to some really bad advice. So anyway, this article says Team Biden's 401k heist could raid your retirement for a woke agenda. I said President Biden is threatening the returns of 401ks. This is New York Post, and it says they're threatening the returns of 401k savings accounts, risking millions of workers' comfortable retirements. Well, I would argue that a lot of workers, the way they invest, would be threatening their retirements as well. So there's a lot of uphill battles going on there. But anyway, I digress. If you put money in a 401k, beware. Up until now, the law has always required fund managers entrusted with your savings to invest your money where it's expected to get top profit for you. And you'll find that with employers, they have a fiduciary duty to their employees as well. And that's something that I've often gone, yeah, you know what? If everybody's driving 70 miles per hour in a 55 mile per hour zone, the likelihood of anybody getting pulled over is pretty slim because the reality is everybody's doing it. So a lot of the target date funds I've never thought were a great thing for investors for that reason, because they concentrate too much money in single asset categories, the most popular asset categories, the areas that most people like. I'm familiar with those companies, so I feel comfortable. Well, who's to say that it's in your best interest to go and put you in areas of the market that you're not familiar with? And, you might, I look at it and go, well, I can educate somebody to have a portfolio that doesn't look like the S&P 500. That's always been my philosophy. I can educate you to the point where you actually do like having a portfolio that is far more diversified, simply because you understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and expenses and all of that. But anyway, so you put your money in 401k, they had to put where it's expected to get top profit. They had to have fund managers entrusted with your savings, investing where it was expected to get top profit, period. Now, but late last month, Biden's Labor Department announced a rule change that goes into effect at the end of January. It will allow fund managers to invest your money in the stocks of companies that favor left-wing policies, even if they earn a lower return. My point. Now, this person says it's legalized theft. I don't know if I would go that far. Because the reality of it is, you look at that and say, okay, so why would a fund manager do if it has a lower expected return? Because it attracts investment money. It is something that people want. Give the people what they want. If people want cryptocurrency, if they want gold, they want silver in their portfolios, they want, whatever, give it to them. It's what they want. Now, they don't want lower returns probably, but they don't necessarily recognize that historically, that's the result of investing in really, really high-priced companies compared to earnings. So you look at that and go, well, okay, that's not necessarily what I wanted, but I didn't know that was because it sounds so good. It's being marketed everywhere and everybody talks about it. It must be good, right? He says a lower return means you'll have to work more years before retiring, starting to put more money in or they're going to have to put more money in your 401k or settle for a lesser standard of living in your final years of your life. And he said that the rule paves your way for the retirement savings to be put into what are called ESG funds, which is what I've been talking about here. But you can stop it from happening if you're vigilant. And that is exactly it. You'll find fund companies. I think that is a really good point. ESG, E stands for environment, social justice, and governance. That's what the ESG stands for. From the worker's point of view, ESG stands for expect slower growth. That's funny. ESG, expect slower growth. These funds charge higher fees and often produce lower returns, especially when oil company profits and stocks are soaring, while tech companies and ESG funds tend to favor are doing poorly. And you think, well, tech's better. It's going to be the future of the world. It doesn't mean that you're going to have higher returns. Two aspects of the Labor Department's rules should cause you to worry. Both reverse worker safeguards and Trump administration adopted. First, Trump's Labor Department stated the fund managers are obligated to put up pecuniary considerations above other issues such as politics. So they ought to be making sure that you're making money, in other words, in English. Or that you have a higher expected return or have a reasonable expectation of having a higher expected return would be another way of kind of putting that. And Biden rule says 401k managers are not prohibited from selecting the investment or investment course of action based on collateral benefits of other than investment returns. Politics can take priority, it says. The regulation cites Biden's goal to prioritize both environmental justice and creation of well-paying union jobs. And so this is the issue. And I like this because it makes the point that I've been making, because people ask that all the time. It's like, how could they do this? I mean, how is it? Well, it's because it's not what you think it is. The rule does not do what you think it does. So my point has always been, beware. You can't just blindly trust, and you can't just say, oh, no, I'm not going to worry about this. I'm not going to think about it. Become a part of the solution as an investor in making sure that you understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. The problem is what most people do is they get involved in the investing process, and then what they do is they go get information about investing from who? Big mutual fund companies, magazines that advertise big mutual fund companies. Or what they do is they say, well, this company's big, so they must be trustworthy. They can't get big unless they're trustworthy and good, and that's not necessarily true at all. If you look around at some of the biggest companies out there, they have some of the greatest rule violations and problems. But they're big, and what happens is people say, well, big equals they must be really good or so many people wouldn't go. And we call that herding bias. It's so common that psychologists actually apply a term to it, herding bias. Herding may be great for sheep, but it's not good for investors. Sometimes it makes a lot of sense not to look like everybody else, because you end up going down with everybody else, but you feel better because everybody else is hurt. They're not feeling so good either. And that's why a lot of people do it, is because, you go through pleasure and misery at the same time with other people. And, so you can see why the psychological bias can be to do what everybody else is doing. I get it. I just don't want to be part of that herd. It doesn't feel good.